Hello, human peoples. You're listening to the podcast network of Gamefully Unemployed. To support us and gain access to great exclusive podcasts like Fox Mulder is a Maniac, Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Star Trek The Next Futurama, and our latest show, Spiel Boys, head over to patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. We do game streaming, movie nights with our patrons every Friday night, and you can even commission your own podcast about anything you want. Literally anything, within reason, and we have to do it. You are quite frankly out of excuses not to go visit patreon.com/gamefullyunemployed. That's patreon.com/GAMEFULLY unemployed, which is spelled like it sounds.
How's everybody doing?
Oh man, I'm doing so good. I'm thriving.
No, yeah, you are. Of course you are.
Just doing great. Doing great over here.
My name is David Bell.
My name is Tom Ryman.
And we just watched Scream!
Scream! 5 Cream! As it was briefly known.
There's certain rules to surviving. Believe me, I know. They always come back. The killer is a part of something in the past. This one just feels different.
Scream 4, the sequel.
Yeah, Scream 4 Part 2.
Yeah. Obviously, spoilers.
Yeah, oh man, it's gonna be so lousy with spoilers.
Yeah, it's a whodunit.
You're not even gonna be able to take 2 steps without spoilers slapping you wetly in the face.
Yeah, so this is the new Scream. It's the directors of
Ready or Not. Yeah.
Which I really like Ready or Not.
So did I.
Yeah. So I said Scream 4 Part 2, and honestly, that's kind of my feelings on this.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. It's an attempt to reboot the franchise for a new generation again. It was like, all right, that last one clearly didn't work. Let's try again.
Yeah, and yet it didn't do anything differently, is my hot take.
I disagree. The main difference between this and Scream 4 is that this one actually attempted to spotlight a new cast of characters, whereas Scream 4 killed off every single one of them.
Yes, which was funny. That was a funny idea, I thought. Yeah. This one does keep characters around. You're right. Yeah, what did you think of this movie?
I thought it was fine.
I also thought it was fine.
I thought it was about as good as the 5th Scream movie could be, I think.
Right. Well, okay. Yeah. So I do and don't disagree with that. Because here's the thing. I was a little disappointed by this movie, and maybe that's on me. Maybe what am I expecting from a 5th Scream, you know?
Yeah.
But here's why I was excited for this movie as a 5th Scream, and here's why it disappointed me, is that watching the trailers, these directors are great.
Yeah.
There's no denying that. And in the trailers, this movie looked beautiful. Like, the cinematography looked beautiful. And so, just from the trailer and seeing, like, Dewey in the hallway, right, in the trailer.
That's a good shot.
Yeah. And seeing, like, this face-off and seeing, like, these really cool, like, I don't actually think it ended up in the movie, like, the shadow of Ghostface on the wall. It felt like it was a good chance to kind of redefine the series in a way where it's like, okay, you got your 5th movie, right?
Yeah.
So obviously the ideal way to make this movie is to not make it. It's I thought maybe they were going to do something, so you can't avoid that. So I thought it would just be more compelling in the actual scenes of the murders and the action and the movie. And ultimately it just felt like, there's just people in houses again.
It's more of the same.
All the screams.
It's more of the same. I think it does it well. You know,
it does it well.
It's a good imitation of Wes Craven. It's a good imitation of Halloween and like that kind of suburban horror whodunit slasher movie. It's a perfectly fine example of it, I think.
Yeah, I just feel like, and it's not really on the directors. I mean, I don't know who it's on. I don't know what the producers are, who's who's insisting they do certain things, but it feels largely stagnant. Like you look at the first 3 movies and, not great.
No.
Like Scream 3, but they are progression, meaning that you have the first one, which is obviously we were both teens. We were both supple teens when that came out, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And it you know, it did I really enjoyed it. And then Scream 2 actually kind of upped the ante. Like the murders are a little more elaborate. There's like car scene.
Yeah.
It did a little more. And then it largely brings it back to Sidney, right? The killer has a motivation that's very clear.
Yeah.
And then the third one, kind of the same deal. It brings it to Hollywood, to the idea of scary movies where it all began. It ups the stakes more. There's the explosion. There's it's trying to do stuff that is like, for better or for worse, different. And an escalation of the series.
Right, yeah, I would say it's not upping the stakes so much as expanding the canvas.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, we're in Hollywood now. It's Scream in Hollywood. And the second one, it was like on this campus. And so it's like, okay, new environments. You know, the idea that someone can get killed, like in Scream 2, like in a crowded theater.
Yeah.
And it's doing this stuff that's like, okay, we haven't really seen that. And there's always this meta aspect. And so it always has to be kind of one step ahead, because it's being so meta that it can't sort of like, it holds itself up to these standards because it's meta. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then 4 came along and they're like, back to Woodsboro. And then it felt like that's the one where it's like, it's not about Sidney anymore. And the killers are just sort of Stu and Billy ripoffs, you know? And it's all about that. It's all about the remake, and it starts getting more and more meta. Whereas like the first 3, I would say the meta is like there, but it's not the point.
I mean, in 3, 3 is out the window.
3 is out the window, yeah. But you know what I mean, where it's
kind of.
And like the killers were all kind of had clear motivations, and these last 2, they both feel like they're just like super meta killers where they're like, we're doing it because it's a movie.
Yeah.
And they're just sort of doing the same performance as the original film. And that's what I mean is like, I was kind of hoping this one would do something else. Make a killer that isn't just a drooling maniac, that isn't just like, it's all a big movie, and it's all just that again. And
right, and like this one, I've seen it get a little bit of praise for it being, it's about toxic fan culture, and I'm like, is it?
Yeah, because it's
not really. It's just that's the motive that the killers spit out at the end, that they're fans of the original series, and they don't like the direction that the series has gone in, so they're trying to get it back to basics because they feel betrayed by the franchise. And that's really the only meditation on toxic fan culture that there is in the movie, is just having the 2 killers spit that out as exposition as their motive at the very end. So it's like, It's basically just the first movie again with the killer's motivation slightly rewritten.
Exactly. And I would say 4 is the same. Where they're like,
4 is the same.
It's the remake, baby. We're the remake. And so it just feels like, like I liked it better when someone would be like, yeah, I'm Billy Loomis's mother. And it's like, oh, I see why you want to kill her. Yeah. You know, like and so it's like, give us a new type of killer. And in the first, number 1.
And in the first movie, Stu, I think Stu's just a maniac, but Billy, Skeet, has a genuine motive.
Yes, he has a motive too.
And then he uses his love of scary movies to execute that motive.
Right.
Like he's not murdering because he loves scary movies. He's murdering because he has a very personal vendetta against Sidney about all the shit that happened with his family, and then the Cotton Weary stuff. And then because he's a fan of scary movies, that's how he carries out his murders. It's like, well, I'm just going to do it like the movies that I like.
Right. So you have this stagnation of the story elements, right? Where it's like, okay, it's all the same stuff as Scream 4, more or less. And so that's when I was like, okay, it doesn't check that box off of being like an interesting reason for a new one. It feels like it's just a producer who was like, we need a new one.
Yeah.
And they're like, got it, we'll do it. So the other side of that is like, okay, well, give me a really interesting execution. And that's like, yeah, there's a couple good kills, but
yeah,
like, remember in the first Scream where people actually got gutted?
I mean, spoilers ahoy, David Arquette gets gutted in this movie.
Yeah, but it's still not nearly as gnarly. There's no intestines spilling.
They almost got an X rating. They had to cut the intestines out of the first one.
Wow. Yeah, they did. You're right.
They had to cut old Drew Barrymore's guts out of the first movie.
I guess what I'm getting at is that then we get to the execution and kills, and they're fine in this movie, but I feel like it's going to blend. Like there was nothing that stood out.
I think what stands out is the viciousness of it, because it's the Ready or Not guys who are good at heaping punishment onto a character like John McClane, which they do with the first victim and in the opening of the movie, who doesn't get killed, which I thought was an interesting.
I liked that.
Yeah, I thought that was a cool subversion. It's like, she survives, but they beat the shit out of her throughout the movie. And for some reason, she's not the main character, and I want to talk about that in a second.
Yeah, that was weird.
So, and then in subsequent killings, like when Marley Shelton gets killed, and when one of the two twins gets, we think, killed, but he winds up surviving. It's just when Ghostface stabs somebody in this movie, he stabs the shit out of them.
He does,
like 15 times rapidly. It's real brutal. And I think that's probably the primary distinction that this movie has over any of the others, is it's a little more visceral in terms of when Ghostface attacks somebody, which I appreciate, because it's the point. It gets to the point of where you're really genuinely like wincing, and you're like, I don't want to see this person get hurt because it's going to be gnarly. It's sort of like Hostel, where it's like, I really don't want to see this person get hurt, and that generates tension because you're like, it's going to be awful when it happens, and I don't want to see that.
There's definitely some gnarly stabbing and stuff. It just feels like, I guess the gutting isn't the thing I should. It's more of like the garage door in the original.
Yeah, there wasn't,
or like having something creative. Like it felt like it was all, when's the killer going to jump out? Oh, the killer jumps out. They run. They fight them off. They hold them back. They do it multiple times where someone's holding the killer back and the knife is coming at them.
Yeah,
and then they die. And I don't know.
Or sometimes they don't. I actually appreciated that. It's like, and this movie even doesn't really go that far with it, but like getting stabbed is gnarly. Like you don't need to.
No, it's like even you don't want to do it.
Even though Scream has always had those sort of like weird environment kills, I'll call them. like when you uppercut someone into the pit in Mortal Kombat. So you have the garage door in the first one, and there's like a car, I think, in the second one. He throws somebody out the window and beats him with a frying pan in the third one.
Blows someone up. In the third one, he blows someone up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games with the environment that they play that I don't think this movie really does.
This movie doesn't play with the geography the way that Wes Craven would in the originals, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He had a lot more fun with the geography. Like this movie ends in Stu's house, so it's the same house from the first movie, but whereas in the original Scream, that house really becomes like a mousetrap, like a maze, where he keeps playing with the geography of it and showing you more and more of the house, where the characters have to get chased through, and Ghostface keeps popping up from weird angles, and there's like climbing out the window and the garage door and all this other. This movie doesn't really do that, even though they make a big deal out of it being in Stu's house. It really only uses the living room and the stairs landing, and that's really it. We don't even see the garage, which I thought was weird.
Yeah, remember like the 30-second delay with the camera? That was a cool idea, you know?
Yeah.
And I just didn't think yes, these are, again, I love Ready or Not. Yeah. And I think this is really well made, this movie.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, it felt like it was lacking in that. Like it was like not nearly as creative as I expected it to be in the way the actual kills happen.
Yeah, it wasn't very clever.
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, well, the story, there's nothing really there. Did you know who the killer was immediately? Because I did. And
I knew who one of the killer was from the trailer, and within the opening 6 minutes of the movie, I knew who both of them were. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know who the girl was, the teenage girl.
I guessed her pretty quick just because, and you know, that's not necessarily a knock against the movie, because if you pay attention, it's obvious who the murderer is, because one of them won't be around.
Yeah, it's very much like the first Scream, too, where it's like, well, who's around and who isn't? I just guessed it was him because...
He's the most famous one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Why would you cast him? Like, the moment he sat down, I literally said, when he sat down for the bowling alley, I was like, oh, that's the killer.
Well, yeah, from all the trailers, as soon as they show Jack Quaid in the trailer, you're like, well, he's the killer.
Yeah, because of course he's the killer.
Outside of the three main characters, Neve Campbell, Courtney Cox, and David Arquette, he's the most famous person. So you're like, well, you wouldn't cast him if it was
exactly.
And especially once the movie gets going and you see that he's very firmly in a supporting boyfriend role to the main character, you're like, well, he's obviously the killer.
Yeah. And like, it's also a problem with, so this is where we get into the meta stuff, where it's like, there's really only so much these could do. I really wanted it to be a stranger for that reason. Because I was trying to think, so they're calling out all this meta stuff, right?
Yeah.
They do, and I really liked it when it was done, I wouldn't call it subtly, but quietly. Like when they do this thing where someone's walking through the house and they keep opening doors and setting up the door reveal of you close the door and there's the killer behind it. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was cute. That was funny. But they keep setting up the meta stuff. And the problem with that is that if you're not ahead of it, then you have everybody thinking about it. Like, for example, like, why would they clear out the party at the end? Like, why would they ever do that? They just say, everybody leave. And it's like, yeah, everybody leave so we can have the third act here.
Yes.
Like that, like, and it's like, you wouldn't do that. Or Dewey not shooting him in the head. Like, Dewey's death was well done, but the moment itself, very stupid, I thought. Because it was like, oh, you're doing the dumb thing that in a horror movie dumb people do that this movie is supposed to call out. And it just felt like unearned. Like versus like the first movie where Neve Campbell's like, oh, she runs up the front stairs when she should be running out the front door, and then they craft a moment that causes her to go up the stairs that's like kind of believable, you know,
mm-hmm.
As opposed to Dewey saying like, I got to go back and shoot this guy in the head, and then he points the gun and then just like doesn't do it for a second, and his phone rings, and it's just like, just shoot him.
Yeah.
Or like, why didn't you immediately shoot him? Like, it's hard to make one of these films with these characters if it's like the killer should have been shot in the face in the first 10 minutes if this was truly gonna overcome the meta-ness. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, well, then you can't have a movie.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So you got to give them some leeway. But yeah, I think it just goes back to it's not as clever as I would have hoped, especially coming from the Ready or Not guys.
I
think you can, I mean, the explanation for why they clear the party out is the party is at one of the killer's house, and when they show up, she announces, okay, party's over. So, and that was their plan to get the main characters there so they could murder them. So that's why they're kicking everybody out. But like the main characters should have maybe been like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why are we throwing everybody out? We're just here to get her inhaler or whatever.
Yeah, they're just going to get her inhaler and leave. And that's what they should be doing. And yeah, it just feels, there's little things like that where it's like, I don't know why you're doing this except that you're actually in a horror movie.
Yeah. So when you're talking about when they're playing with the jump scares, for example.
Yeah.
In that scene where it's with, the 13 Reasons Why kid who plays Marley Shelton's son, he's going through the house and they keep teasing us with long takes that zoom in of him opening doors. And so when he shuts them, you're expecting the jump scare and it's not there. So that scene is built around teasing us with a jump scare. And then it gets to just a jump scare. Like it ends with just the jump scare that we've all been waiting for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like he gets to the front door and locks it and then turns around and Ghostface is there. So it's, I guess, like I don't know why you would spend a whole sequence calling it out if you didn't have a more clever way to subvert it. Although it doesn't totally diffuse it, because part of what it does by taking you through the scene and constantly setting up these jump scares that don't happen, so that when Ghostface actually does appear, they don't set it up the same way, so it happens very quickly.
Right.
So it is still effective. So I get that, but it felt weird to do a scene that was calling out jump scares to then just do a jump scare. I don't know.
Right. And I think that's a lot of an issue with Screams, especially the later ones.
It still works.
Where it's like,
to be clear, I still think it works. It was just odd.
Yeah. I mean, I should say this, and I feel like a lot of people are going to agree with me on this aspect. I've never found a Scream movie scary.
No.
No, they're not scary movies.
They're fun because of the mystery, I think.
Yeah, they say in this, they're whodunits, they're murder, like slasher murder mysteries. That the meta stuff also, what bothered me is they do the thing where they have basically the internet, the us's on the internet complaining about Stab 8 or whatever.
Yeah. Which Stab 8 looked awesome. Fucking Ghostface had a metal mask and a flamethrower. I was like, show me that.
Yeah, that's part of the thing is I feel like the meta view of fans was really not like because they do the thing where they're like, this is what fans will be saying about this movie, and it's like actually not really like the thing is like the idea that fans are mad if you don't go back to the basics, right? So you got to bring back the legacy people. Honestly, I think the best thing they did was kill Dewey in this, and I wish they killed all of them. I was hoping they were going to. Yeah, and the thing is that like what they don't understand about that, and what Star Wars didn't understand, what a lot of these things don't understand is that what fans, whether or not they know it, want from the original is the same feeling, and you can accomplish that with tonal things and like doing something fresh and not necessarily bringing back the original people. It's just the easiest way to do it. Yeah, it's just I would say call it the laziest way. Most cynical way to do it is to do it what Star Wars and what this and Spider-Man and all the other ones are doing. And so like the meta way they talked about fandom and horror, it felt like they didn't actually kind of fully understand. No. These movies. Well, they definitely and they were making one. Yeah, and I think the meta stuff about fan culture was sloppy. It was a little sloppy. Like it was mostly true, but like it was like, well, that's not entirely the case. And I don't know. It's for a movie that purports to be about fan culture. It has two scenes where they talk about fan culture, and they do it very clumsily and in a way that I don't think even though I am really, really sick of fandom. Toxic fandom is horrible. It's a real thing for sure. I don't think this movie was entirely fair about it in the way that it described it and sort of the way that it was like approaching the idea of making a new Scream movie. I think if that makes sense. If you're making stuff, it changes your perspective. For sure. And so this is from like whenever fandom is handled from the perspective of people who are on that other side, I think there's an element of like, it's the same with money, right? It's like you can grow up poor, but then when you become rich for a while, you slowly forget a little bit. Yeah. And I think there's an element there. For sure. Yeah. And that's fine. I think ultimately it was more like they weren't really saying anything about it. Not that a Scream movie says anything about anything. That's the thing is a lot of the issues are issues that's kind of been around since the second movie. Yeah. Where it's like I think they should have dropped the meta aspect of Scream ages ago. They sort of do in 2. Yeah, that's the thing is it's always just like kind of a catchphrase. What's your favorite scary movie? Even in 3, I would argue 3 isn't that meta. The movie itself is meta. Like Jay and Silent Bob show up. Yeah, Carrie Fisher plays a character who looks like Carrie Fisher. It's meta in a different way, I guess. It's meta about Hollywood. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not saying that's a good movie. No, it is an excruciatingly bad film. I would say Scream 2 is pretty good, though. I think that's a fine sequel to it. It's fine. I mean, it's still, like, I don't really care for any of the sequels, to be honest. Yeah, it's because of the thing. It's... all right, I guess I have to defend the sequels, because I do like... You don't, Dave. You really don't. Well, here's what I like: is I like the core idea of a slasher movie where the killer is always different.
Of course, I love that.
And
yeah,
so, I think that's really cool. It's a good idea for a slasher series. I think Scream 2 isn't great, but I do think that idea is really good. But I do think also that this series largely went down a wrong path from the start for sequels. And the meta aspect is one of them. Perhaps even making it all around Sydney is another one.
I think that's always a mistake for movies like this.
Yeah.
Because it becomes more and more like the connections between the different characters in this new one and Scream 5 are ludicrous. And it's because this movie decided to tie itself to that character, each sequel has to keep coming up with reasons for killers wanting the killers to have a personal vendetta against her specifically. So it becomes ridiculous and just really, really very silly when you have to we have to literally have a scene where everybody gathers together in a room and explains to us and themselves who they are and how they're connected to the first movie. And it's like, oh, that's not very good.
Yeah. And I think it's just overall, it's really stagnated the series.
Yeah, it prevents it from taking it. It really prevents it from going in different directions or staying fresh because they keep having to tie it to the same character.
And part of that is built into the series, but I would say part of it is also like you didn't have to go back to Woodsboro. You didn't have to do the same thing as Scream 4. You know. I really did like the reveal of oh God, we're in Stu's house. I thought that was really cool. A clever way of doing it where they're shooting it in a way where you don't notice right away. But in terms of the overall plot, I don't know if it needs to stay. In this, the killer had nothing to do with Sydney. Only the killers, the past killers. Sydney showing up, the killer doesn't even seem to have wanted her there necessarily. It's like a bonus.
Yeah,
more than it is anything else.
The two killers aren't connected at all. They're just they're just fans of the movie who met each other online.
Yeah.
And then the girl happens to live in Stu's old house.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. That's their connection.
That's it. So
so
you really didn't need them in it.
Yeah, or you didn't need to establish. Yeah, I don't know. It's maybe I feel like maybe they wrote two versions of the movie. One where Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox and everybody came back, and one where they didn't. Because you could remove most of them, except for maybe Dewey, but you could remove them without too much trouble.
Right. We haven't talked about CG Skeet.
CG Skeet, I popped.
Or is it makeup? I don't know.
I think it was both. But
it wasn't Skeet Ulrich.
I popped like it was a fucking WrestleMania run-in. I was so not expecting Skeet to be in this movie, and he totally is.
He totally is. I liked that idea of the character too, of the ghost of Skeet helping her.
Right, the ghost of Skeet is helping her.
Jedi.
This is showing up to her like a fucking Force ghost.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Literally shows her where the knife is at the end so she can fucking mercilessly stab Jack Quaid 1,000 times.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
He says to her, so when he's telling about the motivations and he's like, no better than Billy's long lost daughter who keeps having visions of him. He says that to her.
He does.
And my question is, did he watch the movie? Why does he know that?
I guess you're supposed to infer that she has told him about this.
Right, but isn't she surprised that he knows about her relationship though? She hasn't told anybody about that. That's
true. There is a scene where he's listening at her at the door in the hospital, and she comes out and is like, "Did you hear all that?" And he's like, "Yeah, I did." And it's like, "Well, are you bummed that your girlfriend is related to a serial killer?" It's like, "Yeah, it is a little weird." So yeah, you're right. He just learned about that. As far as she knows, he already knew because he's the murderer and has been stalking her.
He certainly doesn't know that she's seeing Skeet Ulrich.
Yeah, that's funny. I just flagged that as well. I guess we're supposed to assume that she told him about it, even though they established they've only been dating for I think 2 months, maybe 3 months.
It's like 6 months, maybe.
Maybe
there's a scene that got cut, but it was
no. There's still the scene that's in there where he learns that she's related to Skeet.
Right,
So she definitely didn't tell him beforehand that she saw Skeet. Oh, I see what you're saying.
Like a scene after that.
A scene after
maybe
where
a
she
scene
sees
got
him.
cut.
Yeah.
But it's not in the movie, so that is nonsense.
It's jibba jabba. I was hoping. So the interesting thing about having the main character be related to one of the murderers, Skeet specifically, is that he shows up a few times to like taunt her and try to basically neg her into becoming a murderer. And that's why she like left town and abandoned her little sister, because she's like afraid she's going to turn to the dark side, as it were. And then she kind of does when she kills Jack Quaid. It's really overkill. Like she stabs him a billion times and then shoots him like 3 or 4 times. Really fucking puts him on ice. So I thought what was going to happen in that moment was that it was going to be like the Rob Zombie Halloween 2, where it's like, oh, she's got a taste for it now.
She becomes Skeet,
she becomes
Skeet, the Skeet.
And then murders the other two, murders Courtney and Nev, and it's like, oh, now we got, that's how you end a new Scream, baby. But they don't do that. They kind of set it up that maybe that'll be what they do in a sequel, but I wish they wouldn't. Like, I wish movies would stop setting up sequels and just be movies.
I wish they are done making Screams.
Yeah.
I wish, like, I you know what? Make Ready or Not 2. Like, I don't know. Invent a new slasher series. Do something. It just,
And that...
I don't know, man.
Something I flagged earlier that I wanted to come back to is the main character herself, whose name I can't even remember. Okay, Sam. Sam is her name.
Right.
Apart from her Skeet connection and the fact that she sees him in a vision a few times, and there's this question of whether she's gonna turn to the dark side. Apart from that, she is the boringest character to the point where she's barely in the movie. So we have a main, so going through until we hit like Act 3, I thought more than once, I was like, we don't have a main character. Like, none of these people is the main character. So the movie feels real rudderless for a lot of its runtime. And it's because our lead character, you can't describe them really. Like, you can't really tell anything about her personality. She's very, very boring, and it's nothing against the actress.
It's a lot of that. It's the new Randy. She was also like, we were just sort of told that she knows about horror movies.
We're sort of, and she's, I forget the actress's name, but both her and her twin brother were entertaining performers, but they do just sort of tell us, these are the new Randys. And we're like, okay, sure they are.
That aspect, I actually, weirdly enough, I liked more in Scream 4. I liked the new characters in Scream 4 more because they felt more fun, like they had more to do. And it's nothing against the actors at all. But it is like they were just more compelling characters. I didn't give a shit about any of these kids.
The most interesting characters were the little sister, who gets the fucking shit beat out of her.
Yeah.
And Jack Quaid.
Yeah.
But remember there's that one character, like the characters really kind of suck in this. Is the main character, I think, is the biggest problem. Where I'm not exaggerating when I say she's barely in the movie. Yeah. Then there's the one girl who is the girlfriend of the Randy twin. Where she's like, I don't even remember what her character's name is. They so don't bother to give her anything.
Yeah, she was really trying too. I think that actress was.
She was trying.
She was working with what they gave her.
But her character was different on a scene by scene basis. She leaves the movie for a long time, so I guess maybe they thought they were setting her up as a suspect, but she never really was.
It's another slasher problem.
Yeah, that's a problem of all of these movies. It's very true. But yeah, she was a barely there character.
Because, you look at like the Friday the 13th. Boy, do they have characters in that. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if you're going to make a slasher, that is something you should think about, right? Is like, have some fucking crazy ass characters in it. Do some weird shit.
I think
have a Crispin Glover or two,
sure.
You're going to need that.
For sure. But I think that's a bad comparison. Because Friday the 13th, Jason is the main character. Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy is the main character. Like, the kids are fodder in those movies. Yeah. When it's a whodunit, you're really examining each character.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's more of a problem in a movie like Scream than it is in Friday the 13th or Halloween or,
Yeah. I almost want this like I have kind of the same disappointment, and this is the new Halloween, although I wasn't expecting much of that. Is it also like it sets up something at the beginning that I felt like could have been it? Because that movie was like you bring Jamie Lee Curtis to the hospital, and it's like, oh, is it all going to be like her, already injured, having to deal with this? Mm-hmm. And then the movie's like, no, in fact, it we don't really have a main character.
Yep.
And it feels the same way where they do the Drew Barrymore character and she survives. And it's like, that's interesting. That's a different idea. And so it's like, okay, well, let's follow that up and I don't know, make it all in the hospital then. Also, when they bring her to a private hospital ward, that was also dumb too, where they're like, don't worry, we'll bring you into an empty, spooky part of the hospital.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, one of the clear things they know is crowds are good.
Yeah.
Because it's just a guy with a knife or gal with a knife.
One of the characters even says that, the girl Randy twin. She's like, no, right. I'm not going. Oh, no, wait, no, it's the guy Randy twin. He's like, no, I'm not going. Yeah. I'm not, because the girlfriend asks him if he wants to go upstairs. He's like, no.
And then they keep doing it where they're like, we better isolate you. And it's like, what? So I don't know. I guess what I was getting at is you start it in a unique way. It would have been cool to have her as the main character and almost have it all in a hospital. Have it do an actual whodunit and have it all in a centralized location. Do something different with the location. Do something different with the dynamic. I actually think it would be cool if they killed one of the killers immediately, and then you're trying to figure out who the fuck the other killer is, or something like that.
Yeah.
Just do something.
Or at least
you're making...
At least earlier on. Maybe they kill the first killer at the end of Act 2 or something.
Right. It's the same problem with a movie I liked more, The New Matrix, which I won't spoil anything, but that's a movie that also does the meta thing, where it's audiences just want the same thing, and then they don't do anything with that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where this one does it too, where they're like, audiences get mad if you make things too different. No, they don't. And in fact, that's part of the problem that audiences have. And then they don't do anything with that. They don't go, well, watch this. We're going to do something different. They just do all kind of to the point that it takes place in the same fucking house at the end.
Yeah.
And it's well, shit, why did you even point that out in the first place,
Yeah.
Why did you make the girl live in the beginning if you weren't going to do anything with that?
That was such a cool idea. So it's why not just stick with this character as the main character? No, we got to shift over to her sister, who is flat and boring and completely uninteresting. Apart from her Skeet Ulrich connection.
Her Skeet visions.
Yeah, her Skeet visions.
Vision. I want goggles that say that. Skeet vision. Got Skeet vision goggles. Don't worry, guys.
I see the world through Skeet-colored glasses.
Yeah,
and that means a different thing, actually.
Ew.
Gross.
Yeah, and that was an attempt to make her a character, but they had to bring in another character, basically.
Yeah, it's I guess they landed on this that'll make that character plenty interesting. It's well, no, it doesn't. I don't know.
Right, and then it all goes back to, and then when we reveal the killers, they're just like, we're crazy, and they're just doing the thing again, and it's I don't understand, the beauty of Stu in the first movie, because it feels like they're all trying to be Stu, right?
Yeah, yeah. And there's something else I want to say about that. So, once you finished with your point.
The beauty of Stu was that he was like that throughout the movie, and the neat thing about that character that Matthew Lillard really nailed is that he seems just like a Matthew Lillard character, like a Burnout, and then you realize oh no, he's out of his mind.
Yeah.
And he's been that way the whole movie.
Yeah.
We disguised it as look at this burnout teen. And so it really worked. And then from then on, it feels like it's like a light switch turns on.
It's a mask off. Yeah. They're like, now we're Matthew Lillard. And it's well, no. the thing I wanted to point out about that is I was really expecting a Matthew Lillard cameo because they kind of set it up. So again, it's another thing that I worry, along with maybe Sam, the main character, becoming a murderer herself, that they were like, well, let's set that up for a sequel. Because the first question that Tara, I think, is the sister, the one who survives the attack in the beginning. The first question the murderer asks her on the phone is, who's the killer it's the question she gets wrong.
Right.
The question she gets wrong is, who's the killer in the original stab? And she says, Billy Loomis. And like, nope, that's wrong. You forgot about Stu. So there was like this thread in the movie of reminding people about Stu's role in the original murders. That like when they get together in the twins' house to go over the rules of a requel or a legacy-quel, and tell everybody how they're connected to the first movie in the very sweaty scene. But I mean, it's, you know, it was quoting the Randy in the video store scene from the first movie, so it's fine. But David Arquette, Dewey, has to remind them about Stu. Like he comes up somehow. He's like, oh no, it wasn't just Billy. Stu was there also. Stu's a Fruit Loop. He was the second killer, but he refers to him in the present tense. So then at the end, the reveal that it's in Stu's house. So I was like, okay, one of these murderers is gonna be connected to him somehow, because they're really,
that would have been really cool too.
Yeah, they're really playing up that Sam is connected to Billy. So it's like, man, and they keep reminding us about Stu. So maybe Stu is gonna show up in like a Harry Connick Jr. copycat thing where he's like in jail or something,
right?
With a bunch of TV burn scars on his face, I guess.
Fuck it. The reveal that Stu's alive, or I don't know. It did feel like it was setting up a lot of different things, and some of it's your classic red herrings, but other stuff with I
don't like when they introduce red herrings and then don't explain them. Like that drifter guy who they reveal was like somehow related to Stu, and that's why the murderer killed him outside the bar. And then they have that where like his connection to the group of friends is that he had a summer fling with the twins' girlfriend the summer before, and they make that seem like it's going to be a thing, and then it doesn't amount to anything. And then they keep talking about how Sam is related to Billy, but they never tell us who her parents are. Who her mom is. So I thought it was going to be Neve Campbell, right?
Yes. All right. So this was the stuff that, because they do this starting place where the killer is killing people related to the past killers, and then they stop doing that abruptly.
Yeah.
And so that was when the movie started to lose me, actually, and then it never comes back.
No.
And it was like, well, why were they doing that? And I had the same instinct as you. They kept talking about the mom being gone. And I kept being like, it's weird that the mom's gone, that she's not showing up because her daughters are going to get, like, how bad of a mom is she? Mm-hmm. And they try to add this stuff where they're like, typical. But I thought they were setting up something like Sydney's dad in the first one, where it's like, oh, maybe she's the killer. Maybe it's something like, I really did like the idea of like the killer not being any of the people we've met. I thought that would have been something no one would have expected. It kind of spits in the face of a whodunit, and I understand that.
Yeah.
But had it been done, this is kind of my brain going like, give me something, anything, give me some sort of surprise. And so, my brain was going in the same place as yours, which I was like, well, who is that lady? Was she in the original Scream? Is she somebody? Is she a character? I don't know. Yeah. And so, like, and it was all about the killers, and then it wasn't. Mm-hmm. And that random guy who died, it was like, well, what was the point of him?
Nothing. He had no point. He wasn't even really a red herring.
He wasn't anything.
Because he dies immediately, and then like his connection to Liv, I think is the character's name, who's the girlfriend of the twin boy whose name I forget. The poor actress whose character just is nothing, is a non-character. The only thing she has is this suspicious connection to this weirdo drifter who gets murdered immediately, and then that just is not anything. It's like, all right. Like, I don't mind red herrings, but you can't just introduce them and then abandon them. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you have to have some sort of explanation for it, or else it's just like, oh, well, you were just throwing a bunch of shit at me to be confusing.
Right. And yeah, really what it all comes down to for me with this movie, and again, like, writing a movie is tough. Dealing with producers
particularly
is tough.
A whodunit is tough.
Yeah. And so I don't know what kind of nightmare I assume they wrote it as well. Did they write it as well?
No. At least they're not.
Okay.
At least they're not credited.
Okay. I assume it was some nightmare to write this, because you're writing your fifth Scream. It's got all these probably producers and people where it's like, you have to put this in, you got to do that. So already it sucks. But what it comes down to is the writing for me, or the story, where I guess it's everything, where so they set up all this meta stuff, and they set up all these elements, and then they don't go anywhere or do anything clever, while being like, ooh, fans are gonna hate it, critics are gonna, be mad at us, meh. Like, they do that meta thing, but they're not making anything that is that great.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, the actual kills are fine. Like, they're not, like, it wasn't very clever, like we've been saying. So it all amounts to this movie that's like sort of like mocking fandom in this weird way that doesn't really go anywhere, while not being a particularly great movie on top of that. And so that's where it comes down to, like, yeah, this movie was fine. Like, I didn't hate it.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't mad at it.
No, I thought it was fine. I had fun watching it.
I had fun watching it too. It just doesn't, like, it talks a big game and then doesn't really follow up on that. That's really what it is.
Yeah.
It's certainly fun, but to me, it's no different than the fourth Scream, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think I appreciated it more that they made an attempt to pass the torch to a new generation.
Yeah,
because like that Scream 4 was so baffling when it didn't do that. Like, do you think you're going to keep getting these three back for more and more Scream movies? Like,
yeah. Well, that was Wes, right? Wes Craven did that one.
He did, yeah.
I still did appreciate that, because the reason I liked that is because it was one of the only surprises in the movie.
That's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, where it's like, oh, that because again, it's all about the meta, right? And then it's all about, well, how do we dunk on the meta? And then there's the element of it really comes down to, oh, the killer always comes back at the end. That bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's always these, Scream 1, Billy does. Scream 2, what happened? The other killer comes back. And it's like, oh, it's a little fun little thing, right? I don't know how they do it in Scream 3. I forget.
I don't remember, man.
Yeah.
It was 1,000 years ago. Who can even say?
Scream 4 does the cool thing where you think it's over and it's not. They're always trying to find this meta, and then this one they just have the second person come back again. And so, like, my point is that it's all about, we set up the meta, we set up the rule, and then we break it in some way, or we do it, but we do it in this twisty way where it's like, it's not the boyfriend again. Oh, wait, it is. And I guess the fourth one had set up one meta that I didn't see coming, which is the reboot, the rules of a reboot, which is, you add more characters and then you stick with them. And they were like, nah, we're going to kill every single one, including the person you think is the protagonist. And I did think that was interesting.
That's
because
fair.
that was something I hadn't seen before.
Yeah.
It's still, it's Scream 4.
Yeah.
So
it's not good.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
No, it's not good. But I think that one is ultimately going to stick with me a little longer. Like, I remember, what's her name? Kirby? The Randy of it? Like, she was way more charismatic.
Yeah, Hayden Panettiere.
Yeah. Like, and that's me saying the name of a character from Scream 4. Like, that's wild.
Scream 4 also has a Culkin in it. It's got that Rory Culkin.
Yeah, it's got that Rory Culkin.
And he's one of the murderers.
Yeah.
So,
spoilers for Scream 4.
Spoilers for Scream 4, I guess.
Yeah. And this one, like, I'm not going to fucking remember any of these characters' names.
Oh, hell no.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's fine. You're either going to see it or you're not, But it's very much like, I don't know. It's even like the stereotype of like, okay, it's the fifth one. Where do we go from here? It's like, well, fucking Jason went to Manhattan. Wait, which one was the fifth one?
He sort of went to Manhattan.
He sort of did.
No, the fifth one was when they killed Jason and had it at the halfway house with a fake Jason.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Fakeson.
Fosun.
So that was the worst one. But
I mean, it still has the incredible scene of the guy chewing out Vic. Tell you something, Vic. You're a real meanie. And then Vic loses his mind and axes him to death. And that's an incredible sequence.
Right. And I know the screams aren't those, and it's certainly not Nightmare on Elm Street either, but there's an element of when you're making like more slashers where you start going off the rails in delightful ways.
Yeah.
Honestly, have Ghostface fight Michael Myers. Like, fuck it. Like, that's where I'm at with this, where it's like, go in that direction.
I guess. I don't know.
Like, I don't know. Like, what's the next one going to be? Like, is it just going to be the same shit? Like, I'm just sick of people in houses getting phone calls and this, like, it's just, I don't care how meta they keep making it and being like, oh, it's like the other ones. It's like, exactly. It's like the other ones. Like, do something different. I'm begging you, Scream. Or just stop making Screams. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I like whodunits. So...
I love whodunits, but they have to be well made. And I wouldn't say it's with Scream. It's like, at least with this one and some of them, it's like a roll of the dice, you know, where it's like, there's no way I could have guessed it was this person.
Yeah. Although, I mean, this one, it's very clear.
Yeah.
So I wish,
yeah, but not for the right reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, for fair reasons, but like, yeah, a little more work could have been done there. Not to include so many characters like Liv who just have no identity. And so, well, she's obviously not the killer.
Yeah. They're whodunits to an extent, because I think one of the things I like about whodunits is also the howdunit part of it, right? Is it someone says it's this person and this is how it was done. And then you watch it again and you're like, ooh, that's clever, you know? Mm-hmm. Whereas like the first Scream, there is an element of that as you can watch it and be like, oh yeah, it is them, isn't it?
Well, the first Scream also had, again, there's so much you can't put back in the bag, you know, you can't put the genie back in the bottle, but like the fact that there are two killers in the first Scream was that how done it, because it was genuinely a really, really great reveal in that movie.
Yeah, it was. You know how, all right, so I don't know if this is a good idea. It was a thought I had during this, is what if they had 3 killers? And then once I had that thought, I was like, oh, why not do like a cult? Why not do like 10 killers?
Why not do Hot Fuzz?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Hot Fuzz is. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, well, why not do something interesting with that aspect too? Just, I don't know, something different.
Yeah.
Would have been neat.
Yeah, mix it up more.
Yeah.
Put them on a cruise ship, so it's like Death on the Nile.
Yeah, honestly.
Scream on a booze cruise would be pretty great.
Embrace the whodunit side of it, and actually have that sort of situation.
Well, I mean, another aspect. I mean, you mentioned the phone calls, but that's like kind of part of Scream's DNA is the game that Ghostface plays with the victim.
Right. This one felt rushed. Like the first part, it was fine.
I liked the prologue.
Yeah, it was fine.
It was a fine update.
I guess what it is that we all know where it's heading every time.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know what to do with that, because you're right. It is the phone call stuff. It's also how you always know there's 2 killers, unless the movie's badly made, because they often do the thing where the killer pops out while she's talking to the killer. And it's like, well, she would have heard the killer behind that door.
They did do, well...
It would be very funny if they did a version where she hears murmuring from the closet.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're clearly in the closet right now.
Yeah. They did do a good bit where they show that Ghostface has the voice changer on the costume.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I thought
that was neat.
That was a neat idea.
But you'd still hear him.
You'd still hear
talking.
it. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Although in that scene specifically, it was the girl who's, I can't remember the character's name. Amber. What was funny about her being one of the killers is that she plays Sadie Mae Glutz in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She plays one of the 3 Manson family murderers.
Oh, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
Typecasting. Good for her.
Yeah, she's killing it. She's got murder face.
She's got murder face for sure. Ghost face, if you will.
If you will.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's all I got.
Yeah.
It's fine. You're either a Scream fan and you've already seen it, or you're gonna see it.
Yeah.
Or you've stopped watching the series a while ago, and I don't fully blame you for that.
I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It's
perfectly fine.
Perfectly fine. Yeah. It's not amazing, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, it's gonna. When I was thinking this while watching it, I was like, I bet I'll enjoy watching this on one of our Friday nights 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Like, and I know that's the next time I'm gonna watch it. You know,
most likely. Yeah.
Yeah, where it's like I wasn't particularly blown away. It didn't really do anything for me. I'm sure I'll watch it again at some point, but that's more has to do with the fact that I watch everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Just running out the clock.
Yep.
Until death takes me.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, that's enough.
That's where we'll end this. Hey, listen, folks. Thanks for listening. If you're interested, we have a Patreon. For $5 a month, you get access to Tom and Jeff Watch Batman, Fox Mulder is a Maniac. We also have podcasts with our sister network, Small Beans. Those are Star Trek: The Next Futurama and Spiel Boys. They're all available for $5 a month on our Patreon. I just mentioned Movie Night. We watch movies every Friday night with our patrons. You can do that as well for a little more. Just go there and look around. Yeah. See if you like anything.
Yeah, just go poke around, root around the trash there.
Yeah.
We also have a store. Head over to GamefullyUnemployed.com. What?
Rate us on the wherever you listen to podcasts.
Do that thing.
Yeah.
And head over to GamefullyUnemployed.com where you'll find a link to our Teespring store where we have all kinds of cool original artwork and designs you can get on t-shirts, stickers, mugs, posters, all kinds of things. So check that out while you're at it.
Yeah, while you're doing all those things. Make an afternoon of it.
Just make a whole app, put on a Scream sequel.
Mm-hmm. I don't care which.
Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Just put one on.
I will say there's now double the skeet in
That's
Scream.
True, yeah.
Sort of. Do you think they got Skeet for it? Because it really did not.
Yeah.
Was that Skeet? Did they get Skeet?
Yeah, they got Skeet.
They got Skeet?
That's not reused footage.
I know, but that's also not Skeet.
Well, it's been he's been homunculized to look like he did 25 years ago, but yeah.
I would argue that nothing about that looked like Skeet. And I thought that was an actor that they got that was Skeet-like. A Skeet-like actor.
Nope.
Did you look this up? Are you sure?
Yes, he is in the credits.
No fucking shit.
If you watch the credits, they do like the Predator thing where they show everybody on screen and then tell you what the actor's name was, and they credit
I didn't get
Skeet.
That far.
That was him.
I can't believe that's Skeet.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. So this is an amazing movie.
Yeah.
Skeet's back, baby.
Skeet's back.